All right, I think she's gone. So here's the deal. My wife, she just left for work. She has to work the next 2 days, and I'm off. And this happens to be the weekend just before her birthday. And there's not much more she loves than this garden out here, this little garden area. And I think what we're going to do is sneak out here. We're going to build her a really nice raised cedar garden bed. And I'm going to video it and show you how I do it. So these are the two beds we have. They're a 4x8 bed. And I think we're going to build a 4x8 bed that goes right here in between them. Should fit real nicely. Now, I've had a lot nicer garden beds out here before, but if you want to see more of that story, you need to go check out my garden tour video I did last year. But for now, I'm going to get my butt to the store. I'm going to pick up some cedar, some pickets, some other materials, and I'll be back. I'll show you what I get, and we'll get to the whiteboard and start designing us a garden bed. Well, we made it back from the store, and let's go over everything I bought. Up here on the table saw what I got two 6 foot by 3.5 inch cedar pickets. I got two 8 foot by 3.5 inch cedar pickets. I got 15 6 foot by 5.5 inch cedar pickets. Now, if you could find 8 foot pickets in this size, you only need about 12 of them. But the store I went to, I'm not going to name names. Well, all big box stores are just getting horrible. Again, I wanted galvanized, but back to what I just said. So I bought 8 5/16 by 4 inch carriage bolts. Of course, we got 8 nuts, lock washers, and washers. I bought a box of these 3 inch deck screws. And then something I didn't buy because I have a couple tubes is some liquid nails or some kind of commercial grade glue or construction glue. We'll see how many tubes it takes. I'll let you know. Down here in the floor, I have a 20-foot stick of 1.5 by 1.5 by 1/8 inch angle iron. And I bought 5 2x4 by 12-foot cedar. This is rough sawn cedar. If they had 16 footers, I could have done it with 4 16-footers. And you could use dimensional lumber for this as well. So let's do a quick little overview about raised garden beds. I like to grow vegetables in mine. If you was growing flowers or ornamentals, that would leave you a lot more flexible, a lot more options. Now, this cedar bed, it's going to be a 4x8 bed, and it's going to cost me about $250. You're probably thinking, man, that's pretty expensive for a raised garden bed. But if you compare that to cinder block or horse troughs or some of the other options out there, it's actually pretty comparable. As far as a cinder block, that's just counting the block. That's not counting footers, mortar, reinforcement, or anything like that. Now, for me, I wanted my beds not 100% permanent, so I chose to just stack my cinder blocks. Every 3 to 4 years, I was digging out all the soil and restacking my blocks due to the weight of the dirt pushing the blocks over. You could use something else like whitewood or pine, but the cedar, it's naturally resistant to rot, it's naturally resistant to pests, and I'm expecting about 7 years out of this cedar bed, where a pine or whitewood bed, probably only 2 to 3 years before it just rots away. Now, a lot of folks say you could probably paint your bed or you could treat your bed, but I'm trying to avoid chemicals, or at least as many as possible. I want to grow vegetables. I don't want to eat a lot of chemicals. And that's why I say if you're growing flowers or ornamentals, it leaves a lot more flexibility. Now, I've seen people use tires, plastic barrels. Um, I've seen some awesome concrete forms. I actually built one years ago. I like the concrete beds, but they're heavy. They take up a lot of space, kind of like the cinder blocks. They're heavy, they just take up a lot of space. So the cedar's best for me. And all I'm trying to say is do your own research, do what's going to work for you, and let's get to the whiteboard. Let's build a garden bed. Back to our infamous whiteboard. And I really think this is probably some of y'all's favorite part of this channel with the comments I get and whatnot. But our goal is to build a 4 foot wide, 8 foot long by 16-inch tall garden bed. Now, the first thing we need to take into account is our 8 foot pickets. We bought dog-eared pickets, and because of the dog ear, we got to lose a little bit of material because of the dog ear point. We're going to want to cut a miter on that picket, so I'm going to call it 94 inches. That's about the most we're going to get out of that picket. If you have pointy pickets or the Gothic style pickets, you might want to account for a little bit more. So our overall garden bed, we're moving on to our 2x4 material now. Our overall garden bed is going to be 94 inches long. Now, how we're going to build this is in individual frames. We're going to build 2 longer frames and 2 smaller frames. So to come up with this number here, the first thing you need to do is account for the thickness of your material. Mine happens to be 1 5/8 and 1 5/8. So when I subtract that, I get 90 3/4. So this frame is going to be 90 3/4 long by 16 inches tall. And then our other frames are going to be 48 inches long by 16 inches tall. I have our cut list started down here. So we need 4 90 3/4 and 4 48-inch pieces out of the 2x4s. The next thing we're going to want is our vertical supports. So on our long frames, let's only worry about the middle right now. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're building 2 frames. Don't forget that. So we got 4 there. And then on our short frames, we got 3 times 2, which is 6. So we need 10 8 3/4. Now, how you come up with the 8 3/4 is, again, you got to account for your material thickness right here and right here. Mine is 3 5/8 and 3 5/8. Add that up, subtract it from the 16. That gives me the 8 3/4. That's how I came up with that. Now on the end pieces, on your 2 long frames, what we're going to want to do is we're going to be putting 2x4s together in this fashion. But we want this distance and this distance across the top to come out to the same. We got 3 5/8 here. So we want to take the 1 5/8, subtract that, and that gives us 2 inches. So we need 4 8 3/4 blocks, and then we're going to rip them down to 2 inches. Now we're going to cut all that out of the 2x4s, and then we'll, of course, start putting them together. I went ahead and done my cut list off camera, and I've got all my 2x4s cut to length. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put pocket screws in all of our vertical pieces, or our 8 3/4 pieces. I'm put about 2 a piece, flip it over, do the other end. Now in the ones I cut down to 2 inches, I may only do 1 pocket screw and 1 pocket screw. That'll work just fine. Some of these pocket screw jigs, they'll adjust out to 1.5 inches, but if you're using the older style, you may have to slide it back, make some adjustments. You could also notice how far back my stop is. It's almost all the way. So that'll give you an inkling on kind of how to adjust yours. Now, one thing I did mess up on yesterday, if you could see this, I told you we was only going to cut 2 plus the 2 end ones for this long one. But we've got to have one in the middle. There's got to be one in the middle no matter what you do. So you could eliminate one or add one, but let's make sure we have one in the middle. I forgot to mention this. When you're cutting your 2x4s to length, make sure you square one end before you cut it to length. That way you can get nice tight joints. I'm ready to start assembling my frames now. On these long frames, there's something we need to consider though. We've cut our board down in width, and that's created a rough side and a smooth side where we ran it through the saw. Now this is only if you're using rough sawn lumber. So what we want to do when we put this in here is make sure the rough side's facing to the inside and the smooth to the outside, and we could hide that later, and the inside will have the same texture all the way around. Now we're going to glue these like we have every face frame, but I want to use liquid nails on these. I'm going to keep my liquid nails towards the back because we don't want this squishing out the front. It'd be real ugly. And then the next thing to consider, on my deck screws, I got Phillips screws. The reason why is you could get a 6-inch Phillips bit. I don't know that you could get a 6-inch Torx bit or a 6-inch star bit like some of the other deck screws have. So I'm going to set this in here. I'm going to make it flush. I'm going to clamp it, and I'm going to screw it together. My 6-inch Phillips is a little wore out, so you might hear a little bit of stripping. I have a better one, but it's an hour and a half drive from here, one way, and I don't feel like going and getting it. Now, I've shown you this formula before on the channel, but let's go over it again real quick. So I'm going to take a measurement from inside to inside. That gives me 86 7/8. I'm going to put a board, 3 boards in here, 1, 2, 3. And each one of these boards is 3 5/8. So 3 5/8 times 3 gave me 10 7/8. So I'm going to take our 86 7/8 minus 10 7/8. That gives me 76 inches. Now we're going to divide that by the number of spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 spaces. So 76 divided by 4 gives me 19 inches. So you're going to do your opening minus material divided by spaces. So now to figure out where these go, I could just measure over 19 inches. Mark 19 inches, put you an X. 19 inches, put you an X. And that's right where this board should start. That's going to be the start of this board. It's not going to be the center. And then once that one's in, you should be able to measure 19 inches again and do the same thing. Now, before you screw anything, go ahead and double check your math. It's real easy to mess this math up or to miss a variable in it. So lay everything out. Another thing you could do is measure 19 and then measure your thickness, 3 5/8. And that way you could have both of your lines, you know exactly where your piece goes. So I'm going to finish building these frames now. I'm going to build both my long ones and my short ones, and I'll catch back up with you when I get that done. I have all my frames built now, and one thing I want to do is some pre-drilling. I picked me a bit out that's about the same diameter as my screw, and on the short frames, I want to pre-drill some holes. That way I could get this to really suck up nice and tight to the long frames. And I'm just going to put one in the center, and I pulled down about 2 inches and 2 inches, and we're just going to drill some pilot holes. All right, let's go put these together now. Now, all we're going to do is we're going to take our frame. We've pre-drilled it here. We're going to run some liquid nails down this, and we're just going to screw it to this longer frame. Now, this is something we could debate in the comments all day long. Which way is stronger? Would it be better to screw it this way and have your screws run in from the long side, or screw it this way with your screws running the short side, holding this way? So I've done the math. This bed's going to hold anywhere from 4,500 pounds of soil to 5,250. That's a lot of weight. Now, most of it will be pressing down, but there's still a lot of weight on the side of this bed. I honestly think at first, with new wood, the screws coming in this way would be a little bit stronger. Of course, that is going into the end grain for the most part, except for maybe this middle screw. And I think at first it'd be stronger. But over time, those holes will rot out some, and I think this would be able to pull away a lot easier. So coming this way may be weaker at first, but over time, to get this to come this way, you're going to actually have to shear those screws off or bend those screws. So that's just the way I've chose to do it over the years. And let me know, am I doing it wrong? Am I doing it right? In the meantime, let's put this bed together. We have our bed all screwed together, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to line the inside of this with our cedar pickets. Now this is a 16-inch tall bed, if you remember, so I'm going to cut my pickets about 15 3/4, maybe even 15 1/2. That way, if you get out of square a little bit or run across a problem, you don't have to be perfect. It gives you a little bit of leeway room when you're putting those in. Something we got to watch out for on the pickets is you don't want to just butt them together. We're going to have to do some milling on the table saw. I'll show you that in a minute once I get them all cut to length. Now, I've lined these with corrugated metal before. It makes a beautiful bed, but that gets in the chemical thing for me again, the galvanization. I just don't want that in my bed. But that's something to keep in mind. They make beautiful beds. I told you about these pickets shrinking, and how we're going to resolve that issue is we're basically going to cut lap joints in our pickets. What I have going on here is a piece of scrap plywood clamped to the fence. That way I can move the fence right up next to the dado blade without hitting the fence on the table saw. Now I have my dado set at about a 1/2 inch wide. It's not super crucial. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take our picket, run it through the dado blade, flip it over, and run it again. Now this seems like a lot of work, but it'll actually go pretty quick. As far as the depth of our dado or the height of our dado, we want to set it up just like this so that when we put these two boards together, it's flush across the top and bottom. Now, one thing to keep in mind, if you need to take a break or go inside for a while, do not leave this piece of cedar sitting on top of your table saw. It will start rusting immediately. I'm talking within 24 hours, you'll have a big old square rust spot and you'll be out here with Scotch-Brite and WD-40 working on your table saw instead of working on your garden bed. Now that we got all of our pickets milled, it's time to just start laying them in here. I'm just going to take them like this. I'm just going to set them in here for now, and then I'll go back and nail them all off. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch crown staple, about 1 1/4 inches long. You could glue these if you want. I'm not going to. They just need to hold long enough until you can get it filled with soil. Now I left my dado blade set up, so if some of these need ran through the dado machine again, it's ready to go. And I'm just going to line these up until I like what I got and shoot them all in place. Wow, I don't think I've ever seen it like that. Usually you got to cut one down, but it's spaced out perfectly. And now, like I said, I'm just going to take my staple gun and shoot them into place. I'm going to try to flush them up at the top, but they don't have to be perfect. Where's my pencil? Coming along very nicely. Still have a ways to go. We got to build our main structure. That's going to be a little bit time consuming. And then we'll trim out the top with our 8-foot pickets. And of course we got to fill it up. That's what I'm about to do, is take a break. I need to run by the local chipping site, see if I could get some materials to fill this big monstrosity up. Now we're going to start the metal structure that supports these beds. I think this is the part that helps my bed stand apart from all the others out there, is I actually put some metal framework in them to keep them from bowing, keep them from busting apart. And now what we need to do, on our center vertical upright, we have one on each side and one on each end. We need to find the center of the top and bottom rail. How I done that is I just took my square, I lined it up right here on the edge of this, and just made an X. Just like that. I've done that on top and bottom, and now I'm going to get the measurement between those two X's, or from one X to the other, which happens to be right at 12 and a half. So I'm going to add 2 inches to that, 14 and a half, and I'm going to cut 4 pieces of that angle iron to 14 and a half, one for each end and one for each side. And then I'm also going to cut a piece of angle iron that will span from one end to the other on the inside and across side to side. Once I get all that cut, I'll show you what I do from there. Now that I have all my 14 and a halfs cut, I paired them up and I cut off a 45 on each side. Should look something like this. Now that cut's going to be just below the surface of the soil, so make sure you take your file and really deburr those. You don't want to be digging in the soil and get gashed open by a sharp piece of metal. Okay, I don't know how well you can see this, but here's the next step. So the first thing I did, from the top down 1 inch, and from the bottom up 1 inch. That should be 12 and a half, or what our X marks was. I centered a pilot hole, top and bottom, and then of course you can see on this one, I went back and drilled it to the 5/16 or whatever size carriage bolt you're using and finished it up. Now these holes again should line up with your X's. You should be able to take this piece, set it down right on your bed, and center up your X marks. Then we're going to square this and clamp it and drill all the way through. That way we could put it on this side and bolt it on. Now, whatever piece you use as a pattern to drill through your bed has to stay at that location. So if we use this here, it's got to stay here. And this piece will have to stay down there. You don't want to be off just a little bit and drill your holes wrong, and now you're going to be wallering something out, throwing a fit. So it's better just do one at a time, do it in place, drill through, flip it to the bottom side, and bolt it together. So here's something I just ran into, is I don't have a clamp that could reach far enough in to clamp this without getting in the way of the drill. So I'm going to clamp one end, I'm going to square it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and try to hold it the best I can and drill through. Now, once I get that hole drilled all the way through, I'm going to go ahead and drop me a carriage bolt in. This is not the way it's going to stay, but this is just to hold it in place. Let me find something to kind of tap that in place. That'll probably work. And now I could come over here, release this clamp, square it up, and drill that one. Now that wasn't supposed to happen. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and pull this toggle back out, or carriage bolt, excuse me. Get this pulled out. And I'm going to go ahead and install this right now. Remember, this goes to the top. So I got all my supports bolted in. Unfortunately, that's just temporary. I'm going to have to take it all back out. Now, this is the part a lot of you, or some of you, may yell at me. I don't have a welder. I can't weld. Well, the good news is you don't have to weld these. All you need to do, drill them out, bolt it together. I have a welder, so I'm going to weld mine together. I don't know if it's any more or any less strength, any more or any less work, but that's what I have. If you don't have one, bolt it together. So I ran this across. I stayed a little less than halfway just to give a little distance so you don't always dig it up and hit it. But just kind of wherever you want it, wherever you think it needs to be. I'm going to weld this in, or actually I'm going to tack it, and then I'm going to pull it out and weld it all together. Now this one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to put it flat to flat with this one. That way, again, if you wanted to bolt it together, you could. I'm going to weld mine, like I said, but there's options. All right, now the one advantage I did just think of, if you do bolt this together, you don't have to take it all apart to finish welding it. I tell you what, I'm kind of wore out. I mean, really, it's only about 20 after 9, but when you're used to getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock's pretty late. I still got to take a shower. I got to get this out of the way, get the Jeep pulled back in here. But I'm kind of stuck on fire watch since I just done that welding. Let everything cool off, make sure nothing catches on fire. So I figured I'd start on the trim. And we got our 3.5-inch pickets we bought. We got 2 6-footers, 2 8-footers. And we're going to build a trim to kind of cap the top of this bed. And how I'm going to start that is I'm going to get a measurement. My overall thickness is about 2 1/4. 2 1/4. And I want my trim to hang over 1/4 inch on either side. So I'm going to rip these pickets down to about 2 3/4. I think on a straight line one edge, flip it over, and then rip it to 2 3/4, get my final measurement. That's probably as far as I'll go tonight, but that's kind of the next step, is working on that trim. Tomorrow we'll miter it, put it together, glue it on. That'll be the only part of this bed we sand, is that trim, just because that's where our hands will be most of the time. We don't want splinters. But I'll show you the rest of that in the morning. For now, I'm just going to get this done, get things cooled off, and go in and go to bed. Oh, that's tasting good this morning. So our bed's almost done. All we lack's the trim. I'm going to get this turned over, laying down on the floor, and we'll start cutting our trim and installing it. So we're going to want to miter this trim on, and we're going to want to leave a 1/4 inch gap all the way around. We talked about that yesterday. So how I'm going to come up with that number is I want to take an overall measurement, 94 1/8, and I want to add a 1/2 inch to that. Now that will be long point to long point, cut on 45s. I'll do the same thing for each side, and then it should come out where we have a 1/4 inch hangover all the way around the bed. Now that we have all of our trim cut, the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to glue it into place. So I'm just going to run a bead of our liquid nails. This trim kind of takes a lot of abuse being set on and leaned on, so I want it to stay, but I also don't want a whole bunch of screws in it, creating pockets for rainwater and dirt to collect. So once I get that where I want it, I'm just going to shoot it with the regular nail gun. Like that. I'll work it all the way around, and then I'll come back and I'll put maybe 2 screws in the short ones and 3 in the long ones. I don't, again, want a whole bunch of holes in the top of this bed. So I'm just going to run some 1.5" exterior screws in there. Like I said, not too many. Kind of space them out strategically. Put one right here in the center. Maybe one down here on the end somewhere. So I hit it with the belt sander real quick, ran over it with the palm sander, and just about one of the last things I want to do is I want to put a big old round over on it. I want to do the inside and the outside edge just to soften it up a little bit, and I'll pretty much finish it up. Of course, always hit your round overs with a piece of hand paper. And there you have it. Now I got to build a fire so we can brand it. But other than that, this bed is finished. It's ready to go out in the garden. That means we got a lot more work to do. All right, let's see if we can make some wood scream again. Well, I sure hope you liked this build video. My build videos or how-to videos seem to be my best videos. If you got any questions, be sure to hit me up in the comments below. So far on this channel, I have replied to every single comment I've gotten. Make sure you go tell the wifey happy birthday. It'd sure make her day to see all the comments. If I can, obviously she's not ready to meet y'all yet, but if I could catch the audio on her surprise or her reaction, I'll try to get that for you. It's going to take timing or whatnot. We'll see what we could do. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
This is a good day to pull weeds in the backyard.
Is it?
Yes. It's a garden bed.
Yep.
Aww. It's a pretty one. Dang it. So you're going to do a cedar in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be pretty, baby. And it's even got your little thingy on it. That's cool. I love it. Dang. So you've been out here chopping some wood?
Yep.
Damn it.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, baby. That's pretty too. You like got the corners rounded and everything.